Hello there. I'm going to go back, as I thought I would do, over the short section that I covered of the Rachel Aviv New Yorker article that I covered in the last video. Because there's so much in here. I mean, I could write it all down in a very formulaic way, but I prefer to sort of do it on the hoof, in a sense, actually, to see what comes up intuitively as I'm reading through it. Because there's so many unanswered questions here. These 25 more cases, let's just say, hypothetically, that we're assuming a case means a child, an individual patient, rather than an incident, or something that's happened, a crash about a child, so a case is an individual child. Where was it? Where did it happen in the trial last year in which the defence spoke to Dr. Evans on the stand and said, "Oh, I understand you put forward 25 further cases you thought were suspicious." And that's the terms that he's using in this section here, that he'd picked episodes, medical episodes or deaths that rose to the level of quote-unquote suspicious events. So these are also suspicious events. He's saying that they were. So why didn't the defence call him in the cross-examination and say to Darry Evans, well, these 25 other suspicious events that were never followed up by the police, do you know why they weren't followed up? What would he answer? What would he be able to answer? Would he be able to answer what the police told him about them? Then the defence. Why didn't the defence call somebody representing the Operation Hummingbird? Detective Hughes or someone else? And ask them, these 25 other suspicious events that your expert witness told you need to investigate, that you should investigate them. Did you investigate them? And what did you do? And how did the investigation stop? On what basis? On what basis? What was it? Because Lucy Letby was not on duty? If Detective Hughes or whomsoever it would have been on the stand representing the police said, "Oh no, she was on duty for some of them, or all of them even," then the follow-up question surely would be, well, what stopped you investigating them? What stopped them being blocked, in contrast to all the other ones that ended up on the indictment? Who and what stopped it? Surely it wasn't you, Cheshire Police, who went back to the expert and said, "Yeah, we've looked into these and medically you're wrong," because you wouldn't know, would you? So who did you get to tell you that they weren't suspicious after all? So when it suits you, when your expert says something is suspicious, it can end up in a murder charge. When it doesn't suit you for whatever reason, then you just let it go. When it doesn't suit your targeting of Lucy Letby, you just let it go. Explain that to me. Make it make sense. Make it make sense. If alternatively a police officer on the stand was made to acknowledge that the reason they didn't follow up any of those 25 other so-called suspicious events, suspicious cases, from this second batch, a batch we don't know the size of, out of which he chose 25? Or was he given a batch of 25 and all of them were suspicious? This is a minefield here. You could go into this for hours and hours and hours trying to work out the logic of it, or trying to get a sense of what it must mean. And none of it ends up as rational. None of it can end up as rational. Sorry, to go back. So the policeman's on the stand, defence is asking him. Let's just say the officer said, oh, well, the reason why we didn't follow any of those up was because Lucy Letby was on duty. Bang, that's it. It should be over then. Trial should be over. Because they would be explicitly saying they're only interested in suspicious events when she's not on duty. So how believable are these other suspicious events? In the last video, when I kept on saying, Dewey, Evans had it right 100% of the time. When I say right, it's always in inverted commas. He's got nothing right, nothing. But for the sake of contrasting, when he says to them, I've got another 25 here for you. Got another 25. Almost double, on the way to being double of what he found before. And they're all rejected. They're essentially rejected. If they don't end up on the indictment, they're rejected for some reason. Police can't do it for a medical reason. They're not going to do that. They're not doctors, are they? So who has influenced them? And on what basis? Or have they influenced themselves in the respect that they simply know she's not on duty? Which would prove explicitly, highly explicitly, and you wouldn't need any more, the absolute framing and the con, wouldn't it? That they've rejected 25 suspicious events on the basis that she's not there. I know that's what Rachel Aviv's saying. The chart might have been different. But it's not only that. It's not only that. It's not only that. It's what does it say about Evans? If Lucy had been there for some of these 25, then we'd need to understand again why they weren't followed up. Why didn't they end up on the indictment as assaults or attacks? Why not? You could imagine, well, there wasn't enough evidence there. Well, there wasn't any evidence for any of the other ones. There wasn't enough evidence for them. There wasn't any evidence for any of them. There's no evidence for any of it. So we can't sort of relegate these hypothetically and saying, these ones, she was on duty, but we didn't quite have enough evidence for it. But you had no evidence for any of the other ones. So what makes the difference? What makes the difference between the accepted 15 of them and these 25 that come up a year later? Another fact is that, or interesting point I think, is that this second trawling exercise is coming in 2018. So what does that coincide with? That coincides with when Breary happens to find these smoking gun cases. What does it suggest about all the other cases that were previously on the that end up on the indictment from the 2017 batch? It tells you that they weren't enough to do anything with. And so they were throwing everything at it. So as I was asking before, what was the motivation? What was the genesis of this other second batch coming along? It's surely because in this conflab between the three elements, the NHS, stroke consultants, police and Evans, they keep saying, well, we haven't really got enough, we need more. Evans, in fairly recent videos, talks about he'd been asked by the police, and it ended up on newspaper reports, etc., to go back to 2011/12 when Lucy Letby first started working there, to look for any other suspicious incidents. And he said he's found a few. He found quite a lot. But they haven't been followed up. So that led me to the question about the second batch in 2018 here that is sent to Lucy Letby. We don't know the size of the batch. We're told that 25 cases were suspicious. None of them ended up being fully investigated. They were blocked, stopped. And what we don't know about this second batch is not explicit in the Rachel Aviv article, nor is it explicit in the, I've got to have a quick look here, in the appeal justification. where it talks about this, it just says he was later sent a further 28 set. Oh, see, this is interesting. Oh, I've got it now. I missed this before. Well, if it's true, because the appeal article is all over the shop. The appeal, not article, the response is all over the shop. He was later sent a further 28 sets of records for review. 28. Out of which, going back to the Rachel Aviv article, he's chosen 25. So now we know the size of the batch. Allegedly. You can't trust any of it. You can't trust anything they're saying, but we'll go with what they're saying. Can't trust anything that anyone's saying here. It becomes the truth, the quote-unquote truth afterwards. Is it true? Was it true? Did it happen when it happened? Who knows? No idea. Don't trust any of it. So they're saying that the batch was 28, out of which he chose 25. Well, that's extraordinary, isn't it? The first time he sent a batch of 33 and he chooses 15. Because he's going for most of the deaths, though, isn't he? Well, no, he's not actually. He's not going for most of the deaths. I'll take that back. He's going, as I've been saying in loads of videos, he's going for, potentially, probably a third of the deaths over 2015 and 2016. We're up to about potentially 19, 20 deaths there. Lucy Letby is charged with originally 8, then it's down to 7. And that 8th death, I don't think would have been on the FOI records because the baby died in a different hospital, level 3 unit. So he's gone for 7, a third of them. But here, a year after his initial lot of records he's looked at, he's received 28 sets of records, and he's chosen 25 of them as suspicious. So he's upping the percentage of them. And despite doing that, he's on a roll. And the police have accepted his other evidence, and that to the point that they have already arrested Lucy Letby for the first time. They haven't charged her. But this is so bizarre. I hope people can see how bizarre it is. They've got enough faith in him to keep him on, to do another lot, and to arrest Lucy Letby. But yet when he does another lot, they just, no, we're not taking it. We're not going to deal with any of those. He's supplied 25 of them. He supplied 15 of them before. The investigation, so-called, wants more, feels it needs more, obviously needs more. Otherwise, why is it looking for all this? You could say, oh, they're trying to do a thorough job. But he's given them 25 suspicious events, and somebody, unilaterally, is it, the police, saying, no, we're not dealing with those. Again, because Lucy Letby's not on duty? Or are the consultants saying, no, we can't go with those? But why? On what basis would they do that? Even if Lucy Letby was on duty, they say, no, we're not going to go with those. There's not enough evidence for those, the police say, or the consultants say. Well, who's running the investigation? You can see how it's maddening, because it's untrue, because there's deviousness happening here. That's why it's maddening. There's no logic here. That's why it's falling apart. There's no inherent logic about what's happened. That's when you can see there's fraud. There's fraud and corruption, because there's no logic in what's happening. Back to the trial last year. So none of that happened, did it? None of that wasn't a conversation that was on, that the defence had with anybody. Why didn't you follow up these 25 suspicious acts? And if you didn't, well, you obviously didn't. Or to what degree did you? And what stopped you? What was the thing that stopped you? Oh, you thought Evans was wrong in those, did you? Well, why do you think he's right in all the other ones then? Either Evans has to be wrong in terms of his assessment, but he obviously is, but let's just go with that, from the perspective of the police and the prosecution. Either he's wrong in all those, Or they could acknowledge, the prosecution again and police, oh, he is right, but it's not helping us because Lucy Letby isn't on duty. Then again, he's wrong in the essence of what he's saying. It's all about Lucy Letby then, isn't he? Because he's saying there are suspicious acts, suspicious events happening when Lucy Letby's not on duty. I know I keep going over in it because it's just absolutely insane. When you track this forward, it can only mean it has to mean the police are utterly corrupt in this, doesn't it? Or that Evans is that they both have to be absolutely corrupt. All of them have to be. Because they're only choosing the ones that, why do the suspicious acts end up on the indictment that do, and the other ones don't? If it's a simple thing, she's not on duty, that's obviously a slam dunk, a simple thing. But that tells you everything about Evans, doesn't it? It tells you everything about Evans's previous assessments, that they're worthless. We know they're worthless anyway, we know that. But we're trying to understand how we can show and demonstrate they're worthless by the lack of logic in this process. I say lack of logic, but I'm just saying the obvious conniving, the obvious corruption of it. And yet it wasn't brought out in the trial. Was that not available? It's available to Lucy Letby. It's available to Rachel Aviv here. And obviously it was available to the Court of Appeal that they knew that. So the defence had to be aware of it. If the Court of Appeal know that he was later sent another 28 set of records for review, but did the defence know that in that 28 sets of records, Evans had chosen another 25 as suspicious? Did they know that? Well, they should have known that. If they didn't know that or didn't find it out, it's absolutely negligent of them. Or there's something there that wasn't disclosed that should have been, in which case you've got to have a retrial on that basis. That the defence weren't given information that they should have had from the prosecution. Because the prosecution obviously knew that. Evans knew that. So if they withheld that, isn't that the basis of asking for a retrial? I don't think they did withhold that from the defence. I think the defence just didn't do anything with it. Why wouldn't you, though? Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you get those in order, Evans and then the police, and drill into them and end up getting the police to say on what basis did they not follow up these 25 suspicious events? Deemed suspicious, it's all in quotes, deemed suspicious events. On what basis? Did they suddenly become unsuspicious? Who reflected on them and said no? Did the police write back to or ring up Dowie and they go to them, are you sure they're suspicious? And he goes, oh, on second thoughts, no, they're not. Sorry, it was my bad, my mistake. They're not suspicious. Forget those. Just stick with the first lot. We're safe with those. I know. Thanks, Dowie. Thanks. That's made it a lot simpler for us. But they're looking for more and they need more. One thing I didn't want to miss out is what I was saying before is over what period were these 28 further sets of records covering? Were they from the 2015, 2016 period? Were they from that period? Or were they from before? We don't know. We know that Evans is later charged or asked by Cheshire Police to go look back to 2011, 2012. He's possibly still doing that or has done that. Are they going to follow up any of those? God knows. It's monstrous. All of it's monstrous and sick and evil. It should never have been possible, any of this. It's just sickening. It's just a queasy feeling looking at all this. With all these so-called intelligent, trained, so-called professionals in the law and the CPS but not getting any of it, not understanding and not caring. They don't care about the injustice that they're doing. They simply don't care about it. They don't care about it. There's no conscience there in any of the people involved in making this happen. There's no conscience in these people. I don't know what they are. I don't know what these creatures are, all of them. So I said that, haven't I? I said we don't know what time period it covers. And again, I ask, well, because it's happening at a similar time when Breary's looking through, trying to find some, presumably more, smoking gun. It becomes called the smoking gun. These two cases, he finds them in 2018, apparently, just looking through notes. The insulin cases, so-called, which there's no proof in that. There's no proof in those at all. We'll go onto that later in the next section about those, but there's no proof in any way whatsoever that any insulin was added to those bags. There's no proof in the reliability of those tests. There's nothing there. There's nothing there. Lucy Letby was entrapped in the police station, and it should have been, the judge should have said, well, you had no, at the trial should have said, well, you had no right to put her in a position that she had to acknowledge that there had been a tampering. It wasn't for her to know that, to say that. She shouldn't have been allowed to entrap herself, because it's unjust to put her in a position to entrap herself by saying, yeah, I understand, I can see the babies were poisoned, and if you're telling me these were the results of the blood tests. They put her in a false position. And she was trusting them in the sense that, they're saying, well, it's true, we've heard it's true. Well, and she said, no, but it wasn't me. Okay, I accept it happened, but it wasn't me. But she wasn't in a position even to acknowledge or have the knowledge to say that she accepted it happened. She's in a false position. She doesn't have the knowledge to know that she can accept it's happened, because in all likelihood, well, I don't. It didn't happen. It's not happened. That's why people are saying all these tests are just nonsense. They're not making sense. There's so much detail in that, and there's a really good Telegraph article that goes into a lot of that stuff. That in the second baby L, I think it is from memory, this C-peptide result, because of the high level of alleged exogenous insulin, the C-peptide should be 0, but it's within a range that's readable, and would show that it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense in relation to the idea of all this external insulin having been given to the child through the TPN bag. So they all fall apart in and of themselves. But this second batch, why have they taken a year to start looking for more? This is the other thing I was getting to. I was thinking things this morning as I was waking up. Other issues that don't make sense. Who's choosing Who's choosing the batch? Let's say let's take the second batch now. There's 28 sets of records. Why they're not sending to the police, who then send it to Evans, every record of every child that's been there, whether the child had a problematic stay there or not, or over those 2 years, are they? So they're picking things, but on what basis? On the basis of what? And who's doing it? Those consultants that have been bullying and targeting Lucy Letby for 2 years. Who else would it be? Who else could it be? Who else? It's Breary, is it? Is it Breary? Breary and Jayaram, all 4 of them? Gang of 4, Gibbs and Dr. B as well? Or has it been passed on through to Gilby? Or who's doing it? Who's choosing this set of the second batch? And on what basis? And if they're doing it on the basis, they realise it looks suspicious themselves. Otherwise, if it wasn't suspicious in some way, why are they sending it to the police? Why is it being chosen to send to the police, this second batch? If the people doing the choosing, Evans isn't at the hospital looking at the whole wealth of all the notes, is he? Or is he? I don't know. I don't think so. So there's people in the trust, the consultants, and whomsoever else, looking at all the notes and saying, oh, now this looks suspicious. So they find another 28 of them, out of which Evans said, yeah, 25 of them are. 3 aren't. 25 of them are. But then they all get stopped anyway. But on what base? No. Here's the thing I want to say. When they're looking for them, well, why didn't anybody think they were suspicious at the time? Why are they suspicious years down the line? Why are these 28 suspicious years down the line? Why are the other 33 that are sent to Evans not all thought was suspicious down the line at the time? Well, some of them are, because that's the building targeting of Lucy over some of them. But they're just finding all these, they're backfilling and they're finding all these problems that were there that nobody realised at the time. But now suddenly they got this gift of insight into looking through notes years down the line, a couple of years down the line, 3 years down the line, depending on whether it's 2015 or 2016. But I don't know when those 28 sets of notes, what time period they apply to. It's not made explicit. It's not made explicit either in the appeal response by the Court of Appeal or in the Rachel Aviv article. But none of these sets of notes, and the only reason they'd end up being sent to Evans is because somebody's concerned about them. They're not sending everything, are they? So they've made a selection based on what? Based on suspicion themselves. But at the time when it was all happening, nobody's suspicious. So the idea of suspicion can just be made down after the event, 2 years after the event, out of nothing. You create suspicion out of nothing. Evans create suspicious events out of nothing. We've got to go back to the article again, actually, because I wanted to talk about his criteria. So Rachel Aviv asks him what his criteria is: unexpected, precipitous, anything that is out of the usual, something with which you're not familiar. This is a retired paediatrician who's not a neonatologist, never has been. Retired for 15 years. Just because he's not familiar with it, it becomes a crime. Just because it's out of the usual, well, back in his memory from decades ago, and he's not a neonatologist, so he's not worked in like level 3 or even level 2 units. He's not a neonatologist. I mean, he might have worked in a level, I don't know whether he's worked in a level 2 unit, but he's not a neonatologist. So what level of relevant experience has he even got? And everything has to be go through the filter of him about what's usual and what you're not familiar with. This joker, this complete clown, it's all down to him. Science, the science again. It's the science again, isn't it? Compared to what we've been going through the last 4 years, Evans represents the science. He doesn't represent science. He's the science. It's his science. And he can make it up as he goes along. And if it's not familiar to him, if it's not usual to him, it becomes a crime. If he doesn't know like he said in one interview, I think it was with the Sky interview last year, he says, and they ask him, well, what made you come to this decision? It was intended harm. He literally said this following sentence. He said, I couldn't think of anything else, quite frankly. I couldn't think of anything else, quite frankly. So if the limits of his knowledge are surpassed or extended beyond, anything goes beyond the limits of his knowledge, which aren't very wide, obviously, then it becomes a crime. And then everyone else agrees. Unless, of course, it's the 25 cases that he said are suspicious that nobody wants to know anything about. Nobody wants to investigate. So they can pick and choose when he's the oracle. He's the oracle. He's the police's oracle, and the NHS's and the consultants' oracle when they need him to be, and when it works for the investigation, so-called investigation. Well, it doesn't. He's Joe Schmo. Who cares about what he thinks? It's rubbish. We'll just get rid of him. So they've disregarded more of his See, how did he pick them? How did he pick them? Well, he picked 25 of them. They disregarded more of his decisions than they accepted. They disregarded 25 and they accepted 15. They disregarded more than they accepted. Why wasn't all that made explicit in the trial? If you're in a jury and you hear, oh, there's this expert here, everyone's believing, and they've got these other experts backing him up. By the way, jury, somebody, was it the police, or was it the police in conjunction with the consultants, disregarded 25 of his statements of suspicion. They disregarded them. What does that say about him, jury? What does that say about the expert here? About his reliability? On what basis would you, jury, accept his reliability in the 15 cases you chose out of the 33, when in 25 of them, the suspicions were unfounded? Oh, for God's sake. Please, I want to just go over his statement again. Unexpected, precipitous. This unexpected note, this filters down into the hummingbird video, where you've got this absolute moron, Detective Hughes, saying to the camera, saying, oh, I was very surprised when... I won't do the voice. I was very surprised when I was told that nothing unexpected and nothing unexplained ever happens in these units. Everybody knows when a baby's going to crash. Everybody knows when a baby's going to die. And the parents know, and everyone's there for it. They're all prepared. They're always prepared. Nothing unexpected, nothing... This is rubbish. So many nurses and doctors and other people have come forward in these last 10 months to say, this is absolute nonsense. There's been a huge number of studies done in it in the past to say that there are many, many deaths on these units that are finally not wholly explained. There was a massive study, it came up in one of the... I'm not sure if it was in this article or another one, where the actual cause of death is very hard to pin down. And yet, it's all about whether it's unexpected, as though nothing unexpected ever happens there. Why call it a crash then? Why do you have these crash teams with the beepers and everyone like ringing them up? If they're expecting it, they'd be there already, wouldn't they? And then it's passed down to this idiot police officer who's told him that? Well, presumably somebody, is it Breary, Jairam, the NHS as a whole? Because they want to keep this fake story going, that nothing unexpected and unexplained happens. And the only time something unexpected and unexplained happens, it's a murder or an attempted murder. Nothing unexplained or unexpected can happen without it being a murder or an attempted murder in the whole of the NHS. Nothing, ever. Nothing ever. It doesn't make any sense, does it? It's all rubbish. Everything to do with the prosecution, it's all... I haven't got words to... It's just that it shows how utterly bankrupt in terms of intelligence in any form of judicial or logical thinking the whole system is. There's nobody there throughout this whole process of years, several years to get the case ready, and nobody's saying this. None of this makes sense. None of this holds water. And it can go do a 10-month trial. This can cost 25 million, the whole charade. The whole fraud has cost 25 million or more. Who knows how much it's cost? A huge amount for the prosecution to bring this stitch up, this framing of an innocent person. And no one along all that time has said, it doesn't make sense. How can we ever... I don't know, I don't think you need to say any more than this. I don't. Just to reiterate something that I've been saying all the way along, is that the parts that are in shadow would be very, very important to bring out into the light. Is that even going to be possible? Did the NHS lawyers stop that happening? I.e., let's take the first batch of notes, of 33 sets of notes. that Evans is sent. On what basis did he eliminate those 17? Now, in interviews, he said he does it in a very sort of brisk way. He runs through, he just said, like congenital disorders, hemorrhage, or infection. Those are the ones that I could see, that they're explainable and expected. Explainable and expected. But we haven't got that material to compare. So out of those 17, there are some there that he's mentioned those 3 items: hemorrhage, those 3 causes of death, sort of congenital disorders, including extreme prematurity and the lack of viability of the child because of the extreme prematurity. And he's mentioned hemorrhage and he's mentioned infection. So in that 17 that he discounts in the first batch as all being explainable and expected, some of them are going to be with infection. So we need to, what we would need to see, what the defence would need to see, is on what basis he's able to see that there's infection there. And then contrast those with the babies that he's deemed that Lucy Letby has harmed with intention and either attempted to murder or murder, and to see if there are similar markers for infection, and then ask him, well, why in this case did you see these markers for infection and you deemed it expected and explainable, but here you deemed it unexplainable and unexpected, and therefore you went for intended harm? What's the difference between the two? Might the difference between the two be Lucy Letby wasn't on duty for the case where there's an infection and you deemed it explainable? And here we've got similar markers for infection, as we know there are running through all the babies on the indictment, pretty much all of them. Markers for infection, necrotizing enterocolitis, all sorts of things, all kinds of conditions they were battling, these poor babies. And is the only difference that she's on duty for them. So that would be another way in of seeing how the framing is done. How by pushing away all the inconvenient elements that, yes, there is infection on that unit, likely coming from the sewage, the hospital wastewater problem, the chronic plumbing issues, the pathogens flying everywhere, that they just can't get rid of. Of course they can't get rid of them, because they would have needed to close the unit down. They didn't do that to even have a chance of getting rid of them, and even then. So where was I going with that? Yeah, that's what we can't see. It's what we can't see. And they're obviously deliberately kept in, and the so-called justice system is just happy for that to happen. It doesn't care that there's obviously the story, that's part of the story. And the NHS lawyers, I imagine, would say, well, no, you're not having access to the medical notes of the babies that Evans decided there was no intended harm there. You're not going to have access to those notes. They blocked them because the NHS now are in full attack mode. They're in full attack mode as a whole. Defense and attack, defending themselves by attacking, because they've jumped the way. They've jumped the way, which is to say there's a serial killer here, and they're fully behind it, and they don't care about the truth of what's happened. Well, they do care. They certainly don't want to be exposed as all those deaths being caused by their own deficiencies. So that's their motivation. So they do care, of course they care. But what I mean is they're focusing on not allowing any light on anything which might essentially is the NHS prosecuting. That's what it becomes in the end. It's the NHS going after Lucy. That's what it becomes, with the attack dogs of the police and the useful criminal frauds like Evans and the CPS. So this is this idea of all these elements of the state coming together. The so-called criminal justice system. It's all it's at state level. This is a conglomeration of evil forces evil and corrupt forces that will destroy someone. Once it's decided, that's the track it's on. It will ignore anything that could make it stop or turn around or even pause for thought. It's actively got to push away everything that's exculpatory, as the police do, because they're corrupt in this instance. And in so many instances, I'm sure they're corrupt. I'm not saying in every one, not saying in every case, but in too many cases. We don't know how many. That's the trouble. We don't know how many times they've done this sort of thing to people. It's not a small number. It's not a small number. We know they did it to Andrew Malkinson, as did the whole system. Joined in as they did. The whole system joins in. Once one element really goes for someone like this, the system won't stop you. Generally speaking, they'll just pile in. That's the sickness, that's the psychopathy of it. We're dealing with psychopathic institutions and psychopathic individuals and pathological individuals here who've destroyed an innocent person, and they're just happy to do it. I don't care what they believe. I don't care if they believe it. It doesn't matter. The witchfinders believed in what they were doing. Jeffrey Dahmer believed in what he was doing. Other tyrants believe in what they're doing. The Spanish Inquisition, they believed in what they were doing. I don't care whether they believe in it. It's what they do is what matters. It's the fruits of what they do. And the fruits are evil. The fruits are poison. The fruits are a destruction of a life. I mustn't go off on a rant because I want to make sure I get other stuff here. I think I've covered all the extra bits. There's more. There's a mistake here in the Court of Appeal response where it says here, initially, this is of Dr. Evans, this is point 22 again. If you get the document, point 22 of the Court of Appeal response for Lucy Letby's legal team requesting application for leave to appeal. This is their response why the three judges turned it down in their infinite stupidity or corruption, actually, not stupidity. They know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. It's not stupid. It's not incompetence. They know what they're doing. They're perpetuating a corrupt and unjust system. They say here in point 22, initially he reviewed 33 sets of clinical records where an infant had died or deteriorated and where the event was unexpected and or unexplained. Well, that's simply not true, is it? That's not true. We're told he requests all the deaths and crashes. Obviously, he's not given them because he's given 28 in the next year. But we hear that he requests all of them from 2015 up to July 2016. We know why July, because Lucy Letby is told to leave the unit in July, to the admin job. But when those 33 sets of clinical notes, that's just all the deaths. That's just meant to be all the deaths and presumably all the crashes. And clearly it isn't because they send 28 for next year. Anyway, that as it may. They're not all unexpected or unexplained, are they? Not even to the hospital. I mean, they're not saying the gang of 4 bastards, consultants, they're not saying that Lucy Letby's killed every baby that's died in those 2 years. She hasn't murdered 19 babies. And nor does Evans say that. So when the Court of Appeal are saying here that all of them are unexpected and unexplained, it's literally untrue what they're writing here. But they don't care about that. Oh yes, they're all the law degrees coming out the yin yang and with the wigs and all the stupid highfalutin rubbish, and they can get something here so basically incorrect, very importantly wrong, in this document here. That's how much care they take over it. Asserting that all those 33 sets of clinical records were all for unexpected and unexplained cases. Well, they didn't end up being, but they never were. They never were all unexplained or unexpected. And many of the ones, well, all of the ones that Evans says 6 of the 7 deaths that Lucy Letby ends up being charged with murder with weren't unexpected as far as the pathologist was concerned. Weren't unexpected and unexplained as far as Dr. Jane Horden was concerned. And the 4 that she asked to further investigation into by the unnamed neonatologist, they weren't unexpected and unexplained as far as she was concerned. And they weren't unexpected and unexplained, these 33 cases that are sent to Evans, as far as the nursing management was concerned there. Pathologist, Dr. Jane Horden, the other neonatologist that looked at the 4 specific cases. Dr. Jane Horden looked at 13 of the cases, 13 of the deaths, and didn't find any of them that were unexplained or unexpected. And yet the Court of Appeal says here, the RCPCH report didn't assert that anything was unexplained or unexpected. Did it? No, nobody is, except for these vicious bastard consultants who then pass that baton on to the police, who pass it on to Evans, and then he delivers. He finds as many as they need. He finds more than they need. He finds at least 25 more than they need. They can't use those. We don't know why they can't use those. Is it simply because Lucy Letby's on duty, in which case the whole con is exposed very easily? But even if she is on duty, it's still devastating to the whole concept of what they're doing, because it still shows that he's got it wrong 25 times. So you think he's got it, when I say wrong and right here, he's got it wrong 100% of the time. But in terms of what they believe, they're meant to believe that he's somebody to rely on. That then the whole prosecution relies on him. Bowen just rubber stamps it. The other experts rubber stamp it. They're all corrupt. They're all I won't swear. They're all corrupt. I want to swear, of course, but it's just, it's just not needed. They're all corrupt. They reiterate the corruption. They just add their bit in. They collect their money, follow the money. They're all doing it for money and status, hopeful promotions in the police. And they're enjoying what they're doing. Oh, it's terrible. Oh, it's terrible. It's taking a toll on the team. No, they're into it. They got their teeth into it. They're like a ravenous pack of dogs. Like hunting dogs, the police. Going after an innocent person. Like chasing a deer through the forest. That's what they are, this pack of dogs. The police. And that pack of dogs has been set onto them essentially by the NHS. And in particular, those consultants as the beginning of it. But then the NHS consolidates in, and then it's all about Lucy, all about getting Lucy. And Lucy is the deer that they're going to take down and torment for years. So she's track her for years. Break her down psychologically for years. And when she expresses her concern, when she expresses her extreme distress on paper to try to keep herself afloat mentally and psychically and psychologically and emotionally, they turn all that against her as well. I knew from the beginning that this was the most stunning process of evil one of the most stunning processes of evil I've ever come across. And it's just got worse and worse and worse and worse the more you learn about it. And what gets even worse is that they want to maintain it. The system is so, I keep saying evil. It is evil. What other words can I say? It's so immoral. The system is so immoral. As with Lord Denning, Lord Denning going, we can't lose the trust in the police and the criminal justice system, so the Birmingham Six probably should stay in prison, even though I acknowledge they're innocent, they're very likely to be innocent, but we can't lose the trust in the police, in the system. That's a psychopath to me. That's a criminal. That's a criminal mind. That's a criminal mind. And you've got all those characters involved in this case. The same mindset. Criminal mindset. In the police, the criminal mindset to perform this injustice, to create the crimes out of nothing, to see and know and be aware and be shown all this exculpatory evidence, but push it away because it harms your investigation. That's the criminal mindset, because you're doing something criminal. What is the criminal act? Well, first of all, taking Lucy Letby, you're causing the state to kidnap her for life, to destroy her life. I'd like to see everyone involved in what they've done to Lucy Letby and in the cover-up of the truth in relation to what the parents have gone through, to be serving extensive prison sentences. But none of that's going to happen. No one's going to be held accountable. They never are. Because the system just wants to protect itself. Because the system is rotten. It's disgusting and rotten, and the people are in it largely, not everyone, but largely are in those systems for their own benefit and for nothing else. And they're not, truth and justice don't mean anything to them. It means nothing to them. Only winning, as I said in a previous video. It's just about winning, 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 winning at any cost. This vicious, evil prosecutor, sleeping like a baby at night, not haunted by the fact that he's part of a dark, evil, theatrical charade that has destroyed an innocent person and kept the truth from many, many parents about why their babies died in that unit. There's no conscience there. These people are... There's no conscience in them. Well, what do we call such people? I mean, I don't know. I keep going on about that, but... And then now and again you get someone saying, they're doing their best. They mean well. They're well-meaning. And they're not well-meaning. If you're well-meaning, you don't do this. If you're well-meaning, you don't get 25 cases of suspicious thing and just say as the police, we're not looking into those because Lucy Letby's not on duty, or we're not looking into those for some other reason. You're not well-meaning. Or if you get those and you don't think this guy's a fucking nutter, Evans, we've got to put a stop to him. We can't. This is all falling apart, as it should do. Their investigation should fall apart in the sense that their first duty was to decide whether a crime had been committed, but they didn't want to do that. Same as Susan Gilby. Don't you know what she's done? The police go in there and say, yeah, there's a serial killer here. We're going to get her. That's it. They didn't follow any other line of investigation. Lazy, arrogant, thick, but much more than that, calculating to destroy someone without any care, without any due care about this person could be completely innocent of this and there could be other reasons for these deaths. Didn't care about that. Don't want to know about any of that. Didn't look into any of the likelihood of the pathogens there. Didn't do any testing for it. Didn't look at any other... What was the infection control? Where were those documents for those years? Did they look at them even? No. Didn't do anything. Nothing. It's all about getting the quarry. Back to the hunting analogy. They're after someone. They're going to get them. No conscience will stop them because there's no conscience to trouble them. I don't know if I can do any more on this section. It's just something else might occur to me. It's just a sense of absolute disgust. Absolute disgust with what these collection of vile people are, with what they are. And what they continue, and it doesn't bother them an iota what they've done. And as it's beginning to fall apart, I hope it continues, obviously, to fall apart more publicly with more accounts coming out, the more they'll dig in. because they'll feel themselves under threat then, as they should be. They should all be under threat of major prison sentences. I'd like Evans to be serving the sentence that Lucy was given. That's what I believe. And certain parts of the police as well, and those consultants, particularly Breary and Jayaram. I'd like them to all be given that same sentence. None of it's going to happen. None of it's going to happen. Nothing's going to happen to them, even when the convictions are overturned. But that's for later anyway. Even though the important thing is that the convictions are overturned, and that the parents find out the truth about what happened to their babies. Because what a terrible burden's been placed on them to know, for them to be in this false consciousness, false belief that their children have, had their lives either ended or an attempted murder has been perpetrated against their children, or that their babies have been murdered. And it's not true, and they've been forced to live with this lie, been made to live with this lie by these liars, by these pathological liars. That's got to be overturned. That's got to be set right. It's sickening, isn't it? It's sickening. It's the feeling is absolute disgust with what the system will just keep trying to protect itself, because it's rotten, because it's psychopathic, because it's pathological. The system is pathological, and there are many pathological individuals within it. And the minority of good, decent, honourable people are either they get rid of them. They get rid of them. Like I said before, with the Hummingbird team, anybody started saying, well, hold on a minute, sorry, Sarge, or whatever they said. How come Evans is saying that he said there's 25 suspicious events here? How come we're not following them up? Oh, well, Carruthers, or whatever. PC, or DC Chambers, not Chambers, that's the other guy. Lucy Letby wasn't on duty for those, and they go, well, that doesn't make sense, Sarge. How can we know he's reliable for all the other ones? He's shut down. He's either out. He's either in or he's out. They all got to be on the same page. And what is that page? The page is, we're going to get this person. Doesn't matter whether they're innocent or guilty. Anything that damages our focus on getting them. We don't hear that. We don't see it. And we don't talk about it. That's the first rule of Hummingbird. We don't talk about exculpatory evidence. We don't hear it. We don't read it. Or if we do hear and read it and see it, we forget it down the memory hole. It's just not what we do here at Hummingbird. It's not what we do here in the criminal justice system. Why didn't the defence dig into these 25 rejected second batch suspicious incidents and get to the bottom of why the police, either unilaterally or in conjunction with the NHS, said we're not taking any of those further? Why? Why didn't they do that? Where were the defence in that? What answers would have come out of a cross-examination about that issue? We don't know, because they didn't do it. They didn't do it. It would have made all the difference. Should have made all the difference. Are we looking at the NHS lawyers again, stopping certain questions being asked? Why have they got that amount of power? At the root of all this, it becomes about protecting, quote unquote, protecting the NHS, so that the defence has got one hand and four fingers of the other hand behind his back in his defence of Lucy Letby. And coming up to an hour now. Thanks for listening. I know I've repeated myself a lot, but it's horrendous. Is it not horrendous? Is this not one of the most horrific miscarriages of justice? That even saying that is mild. All of it's rotten. All of it, from beginning to end, is rotten. And it always will be until it's put right. It will always be rotten. Thanks for listening, and take care. Bye-bye.